Hello everyone, Athena Artiste here with a short video on growing tips, particularly in the harsher environments, climates and that of both Banished and mods. Keep in mind that your seed types and your climates would be first coming from the settings inside Banished itself. That is, if you don't have any other mods in place, such as Colonial Charter or New Medieval Town or Discrepancies Small Town, or many of the others that include other food types and so forth, where more seed types may be added or other climate settings. Now, when you set the settings within whatever it is that you're using, those, of course, are going to affect whatever seed you're using. And of course, if you're using a mod such as cold realism, on top of that, that is going to dictate that whenever the temperature reaches the freezing point, whenever that will occur, that any crops that have not been harvested, or in the case of wild foods that have not been picked up, then they are going to die. Now, at one time, there was this lovely chart on the old Colonial Charter website, which I'm afraid I don't think anyone's recreated. So I'm trying to go somewhat from memory here and try to put together a quick little chart of some kind that someone could use as a reference by splitting crops up into three general categories: those that grow fast, those that grow at what I would call a normal rate, and then the slower growing crops. Of course, now we're talking about the seed ones that you put in fields. So those can only be planted, of course, sometime between the early spring and the late spring. Once it gets to be early summer, you cannot plant those seeds anymore. Now, the faster growing ones will ripen sometime, usually between the late summer into the early fall time. Now, the normal growing ones would usually ripen sometime between early fall and fall itself. Now, the slower growing ones have a little bit later, they take sometime between fall and late fall. Now, where your freezing temperature, because remember, your freezing temperature is controlled by your climate setting. Whenever that occurs, it can occur as early as sometime early fall. Usually does never, it is very rarely, that is, that I've ever seen it occur in late summer. But it more normally occurs sometime in the fall to the late fall. With a very harsh setting of Colonial Charter, it can occur more often in the early fall. But that means that anything that has not, like I said, been harvested or picked up, you're going to have difficulty getting. So that's the strategy when you're dealing with these, especially with those slow growing crops. And unfortunately, because that chart's gone, I can't give you a list of what those are. I do know the ones that I've always had problems with in particular are peppers and herbs. But the strategy I have used has always been to use very small field sizes, which normally means something between a 10 by 10 to a 12 by 12 at the very largest, and that applies to orchards as well. Or for those ones that are quite problematic, I go down to either a 6 by 6 to a 6 by 8. And always to add at least one additional farmer into beyond whatever is suggested for the field, because the only ones who can plant your fields are the farmers, as well as harvest them. Now, if you're running one of the Colonial Charter versions, they have an option where you could turn off that the farmers would also be picking up the harvest and taking it to the barn. So that would mean if you have that activated, they'll stay there and continue to harvest until they get until they can't harvest anything else. And then, of course, like everyone else, they would start picking up those harvested items and take them off to the nearest barn. So it once they've been harvested and they're laying there on the ground in their crates or whatever it is that how they are once they've been harvested, they'll last a little bit longer. But that's the whole trick that how I have found to work with them is to stick to small field sizes and to use a little bit more farmers than normal so that that way at least I can get whatever I can harvested before that freezing temperature starts. So I hope you've enjoyed this and I'll see you in one of my other videos. Bye for now.